All right. Today we're going to critique my nephew's mechanics, hopefully as a review for some of my students and maybe as a formative lesson for him if he ever watches this. Okay, but I want to talk about coordinate adjectives, how to punctuate coordinate adjectives, one of our important comma rules for this year. And I think once you get beyond sort of the language of it, conceptually, it's pretty straightforward and simple. So at a basic level, coordinate adjectives can be described as adjectives that are changing, modifying, describing a noun at a similar level. They have more or less the same impact on describing the word. Now, this comes with a huge asterisk because we could do a whole separate lesson on the order of adjectives because there are common patterns in terms of which adjectives we tend to put closer to the noun and which adjectives we put further away from the noun. But for the sake of this lesson, think of coordinate adjectives as adjectives that are modifying a noun at more or less the same level. Right? A non-coordinate adjective is an adjective, in the case of today's example, that has more essential meaning, primary meaning in modifying a noun. So it's kind of weird that we describe it as the negation of a coordinate adjective, a non-coordinate adjective. We can call these essential adjectives. These are adjectives that are so important to the meaning of the noun they're modifying that they essentially become part of the noun themselves. So there's an example down on the bottom about the idea of a sports car. Right? Well, sports is an adjective, right, that modifies car. Right? But I could put any string of adjectives in front of sports car. Okay, new, shiny, red, automatic, right, etc. And none of those words are going to challenge the importance of the word sports in terms of defining the car itself. So sports, right, in the phrase a new red sports car is not a coordinate adjective. However, new and red are, right? For the sake of this discussion, new and red are close enough, right, in their relative importance to describing the car that they're considered equals. And what do we do when we have coordinate adjectives? Well, if we have more than one, we're going to separate them either with the word and, right, or with commas. Right? So if you have coordinate adjectives, if you are describing a noun with more than one adjective and you have at least two of them that are of relatively equal value, they're going to need an and or a comma in between them. Now, if we're looking at today's case example, which is this wonderful menu prepared by my nephew, right? I was fascinated to look at this and see that instinctually, right, and I'm going to give him full credit, okay, for intentionality here. Instinctually, he is pretty close, okay, to nailing this already with some of these items. So let's look at line one, crunchy French bread, right? That is correct, right? It is correct to not have a comma there between crunchy and French because French bread, right, is a thing in and of itself. And if you want a little trick for measuring whether or not adjectives are coordinate, try flipping them, right, in terms of their order and see if you get the same sense. Well, French crunchy bread just probably doesn't scan as right for most of us, right? French and crunchy bread, crunchy and French bread. No, it's French bread and it's crunchy, right? These adjectives are not coordinate. French is more significant, more important, more essential. So we don't put an and or a comma between them, right? Now, let's look at the next line, soft, mellow, garlic butter, right? Soft and mellow here, right, are coordinate adjectives. It is right that there is a comma between those two. However, garlic is not on the same level as soft and mellow. Okay? Garlic butter, okay, in describing cuisine is a thing, okay, is a thing in and of itself. Now, what's interesting is my nephew's pretty young, right? He actually might not sort of conceptually agree or understand this yet. He might not have had enough exposure to garlic butter to process that as one sort of specific item. Right? We can take an interesting case perhaps of garlic mashed potatoes and maybe have a debate as to whether or not garlic and mashed, okay, are coordinate in their significance to potatoes in that case. Right? Is garlic mashed potatoes a separate thing from mashed potatoes? Or is garlic just modifying mashed potatoes at the same way that maybe sort of, let's say, spicy mashed potatoes? I don't know what that would taste like. Probably not very good. Right? But we have one correct example there, one incorrect example. Let's look at the next line. Fresh, crisp, green salad. Okay? Fresh and crisp, absolutely coordinate adjectives. Green is interesting here because I would argue that, like, in American vernacular, American English usage, right? Green probably is coordinate. However, right, if I'm remembering correctly from my formative studies in the French language, right, the difference between apologies for my pronunciation, but a salad vert versus a salad de tomate, tomato salad, right? Green might have sort of a different level of importance in different cultures. But I think fresh, crisp, and green are probably all coordinate adjectives here. Right? The one error here being placing a comma between green and a salad. We do not need a comma between the last adjective and the noun. So my challenge to you, anyone who happens to be looking at this, is let's look at this bottom line: savory short rib ragu with homemade rigatoni. Now, I don't want to get hung up on whether or not short rib should be hyphenated, okay, or even combined as a compound word. But I suppose you could include that in your analysis. But mostly I'm looking at the words savory and short rib and wondering what your takes are on whether or not we have coordinate adjectives here or non-coordinate adjectives. So anyway, hope this helps out, and thus concludes the lesson.